Hi all, this is Nelly, Ordinary People Saintly Souls, and I am reading for you, or basically summarizing from the scenes that Maria Valtorta, the Italian mystic, saw about the time between Jesus' body being taken from the cross and the resurrection. And many pages. It's actually a very long passage. It's several pages, but many pages are dedicated to the grief of Mary, his mother. She moans, she prays, she constantly remembers Jesus, and Valtorta saw that and quotes every word. And at one point, Joseph of Arimathea, who had a grave available that they could lay Jesus' body in, and Nicodemus want to prepare the body of Jesus with ointments and spices and bandages. And this makes Mary very upset. His mother, she says, "Don't you believe in the resurrection?" And so she starts to quarrel with them that they have no faith. And then she asks Mary of Magdalene, who's there as well, "Don't you remember your brother Lazarus? He was brought back to life after 4 days and his body was completely putrid." And so they reflect on that. And Mary says a prayer that those who are without faith will gain faith. And after a while, they convince her that they should prepare the body. And so they try to take care of the wounds as much as possible. They put ointment on the body, and they then wrap it in bandages and in a shroud. And in the end, it basically looks like a pile of clothes, just lying there. Jesus is completely gone. The whole Jesus shape is gone. And after the stone is rolled in front of the grave, his mother doesn't want to leave. She wants to stay there during the night and keep guard. But it is after a long discussion, Mary of Magdalene, who convinces her to come home by saying, "Look, we are of such little faith. You have to stay with us, otherwise we are at risk of losing our faith." And while they go home, they run into someone from the temple. And he attacks Joseph by saying, "You have entered the house of Pontius Pilate." And that means you have violated the law, and you cannot celebrate Passover. It's forbidden for you because you are contaminated. Because remember, Joseph went to Pontius Pilate to ask permission to bury Jesus' body. And then Joseph says, "Well, you too, you just touched me, and I'm all covered with his blood and with the sweat of his death." And so the temple member says, "Oh, horror, away, away with that blood." And then Joseph says, "Be not afraid, it has already abandoned and cursed you." So this is, cursing each other in the first century, I suppose. And then the person from the temple says, "And you as well, you cursed one. And now that you are flirting with Pontius Pilate, don't think that you can take the corpse away. We have taken the necessary steps to ensure that the story comes to an end here and now." And so that is true. Later on, as we know, the temple leaders will send temple guards to watch over Jesus' body. And then one of the women who is with Jesus' mother says, "Wasn't your house burned down?" They refer to the earthquake and everything that happened. "Cursed," he says, and he runs away. And as he runs away, he knocks against the women. And then he utters dreadful insults to them. And John gets really mad. Mild-mannered, always kind and nice and friendly John gets really mad, and he jumps on him and says, "Ask the mother for forgiveness, or I will strangle you, you demon." And so, in the end, they even attract the attention of the guards, of the Roman guards, and they quarrel a bit more. But then Mary says, "Stop it. Jesus preached forgiveness. You stop it right here." And then John says, "Mother, you are right, but they are criminals and they make me lose my head. They're sacrilegious. They offend. You and I cannot allow that." So then they go to the house, and like I say, it is mostly about Mary, what we see there. But and she spills her grief in the upper room. She goes and sits in the upper room where they had the Last Supper, and she touches everything that Jesus touched. And at the same time, people come and go to the house because the town is full of rumors. You know, there's the news of the earthquake, and nobody knows exactly how many people died. There's total mayhem. People have fallen ill, and then there are all kinds of rumors. This person has fallen ill. All kinds of friends of Jesus, there are rumors that they've fallen ill. Like this Joanna, she has fallen ill, deadly ill, gravely ill. And some are even dying. So lots of rumors because they haven't seen each other, and they didn't have a phone in those days, remember? And then that Pilate is going to arrest everybody, those belonging to the temple and those following Jesus. So there's really an atmosphere of fear that is spreading around. And then after several hours, people starting to visit Mary. So it's still Friday night. And the first one to visit her is Veronika, who's also called Nike. And she brings the cloth that Jesus used to wipe his face, that she gave to him on the way to Golgotha. And actually, she had brought it so that he could use it as a loincloth during the crucifixion, because she must have known the rule that the prisoners have to undress and take off all the clothes. And Mary says, "All I want is Jesus' smile." And then they open the cloth, and it turns out that it shows a vague impression of Jesus smiling, as he was wiping his face with it. And that is a great consolation for his mother, Saint Mary, because she sees it as a sign of God. She says, she received a sign of God that all will be well. At the same time, Mary of Magdalene, she steps out because she says she has to go and start to gather the precious ointments and the balms so that they can go back to the grave and prepare Jesus' body properly after the Sabbath. And again, there's a big quarrel that she shouldn't go out, a woman shouldn't be alone in the street, and nobody knows what's going on out there. But she is a brave woman, and she goes anyway. And then the last way of the last argument to convince her to stay inside is say, "It's the Sabbath, you're not allowed to go out." But then she says, "The Sabbath is dead. A new era has begun. Other laws, sacrifices, and other ceremonies we will have." So she says, "I don't care about the Sabbath." And then many visitors keep coming, and they're all Roman because they do not have to observe the law that you cannot travel during the Sabbath. So after Veronika comes Valeria and Joanna of Cusa. So now we know Joanna of Cusa was not mortally ill and she was not dying. They all come to check on the women and on Jesus' mother and to make sure that she's okay. Now then there comes a very long section, which I have to do in another video, in which Jesus reflects on the time between his death and his resurrection. I will do that in a separate video. And for example, comes the next Roman, Manaen. He comes to check on Mary and see if she needs anything. And by that time, it is the night of Friday to Saturday, and Mary hardly sleeps. She just constantly prays, sometimes dozes off, wakes up and prays again. She hardly eats and she hardly sleeps. It's as if she is in a wake to watch over her son, although his body is not there. And but then on Saturday, she starts to call people and ask about the apostles. She's starting to worry about the apostles. What's happening with them? Are they okay? And this is when Longinus, the soldier who was standing next to the cross, when he visits her, and again, because it's a Sabbath, he can do that. It's still the Sabbath. It's Saturday by then. And first of all, he apologizes for contaminating the house. He says, I'm sorry, I didn't want to contaminate the house. But it was as if something drove him to come, because he brings them the lands that he pierced Jesus' side with. And he brings it to the mother who just caresses it and sees it as an incredibly important relic. And the land still has his blood on it. So it was very precious for her to have this immediate contact with Jesus. And they talk a bit. She talks a bit with Longinus. And then he says, and they talk about the new religion that he said he would establish. And then Longinus says, I will come, a religion that has as its head such a hero cannot be but divine. So he pledges that he will follow Jesus' teachings. In the meantime, John returns, because Mary had also sent John out to find Judas. And John has, to his horror, has found Judas hanging on a tree, looking all black and swollen. And according to what Valtorta saw, there was all kinds of birds of prey around him, picking on his body. And at the same time, she found Peter. John found Peter, who had gone to the garden and was sitting at the place where Jesus was praying. Because Mary also had sent John out to find Jesus' mantle, because they realized he wasn't wearing that after his arrest. So it must have been somewhere. So he finds it, and he sees how it's torn, and we know it's torn by the teeth of Judas. And then he collects Peter, who absolutely does not dare to face the mother. He is so ashamed, and he brings Peter to Mary, and she consoles Peter and tells him that everything is forgiven. So this was nearly ordinary people, saintly souls, covering the time up to the resurrection. And in the next video, I will tell you how Valtorta witnessed the actual resurrection, the coming back to life of Jesus Christ. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you in the next video.